In this week's In-Ear Insights, another week, another gazillion posts on LinkedIn and various social networks about, hey, the ultimate ChatGPT prompt. OpenAI, of course, published its prompt blocks library of hundreds of mediocre prompts that are particularly unhelpful. And what we're seeing in the AI industry is this. A lot of people are stuck and focused on, how do I prompt ChatGPT to do this, that, or the other thing, when in reality, that's not where the value is. And so today, let's talk about where the value of generative AI actually is, because a lot of people still seem very stuck on the 101 basics, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is totally great, but what comes after it? So Katie, from your perspective, as someone who is not the propeller head in this company, and and is very representative of the business user who wants real results from this stuff and not just shiny objects. What do you see in the generative AI space right now? And more important, what do you see it's missing?
I see it's missing any kind of strategy, to be quite honest. The way that people are using generative AI, and this is a broad stroke, it's a generalization, is still very one-off. It's still, let me go to ChatGPT to summarize these meeting notes. Let me go to Gemini to outline a blog post. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not a strategy. It's one more tool in your stack. And so the big thing that I see missing is, what are we doing with this long term? Where does it fit into the overall workflow? And how is it actually becoming part of the team? How is it becoming integrated into the organization? So people who are saying, well, we're sitting down for our 2026 planning, we need to figure out where AI fits in. I think you're already setting yourself up for failure, because you're leading with AI needs to fit in somewhere, versus you need to lead with, what do we need to do in 2026, period. And so Chris has brought up the 5P framework, which is 100% where I'm going to recommend you start. And so start with the purpose. So what are your goals? What are the questions you're trying to answer? How are you trying to grow and scale? And what are the KPIs that you want to be thinking about in 2026? Notice I didn't say with AI. Leave AI out of it for now. For now, we'll get to it. So what are the things that you're trying to do? What is the purpose of having a business in 2026? What are the things you're trying to achieve? Then you move on to people. Well, who's involved? It's the team, it's the executives, it's the customers. Don't forget about the customers, because they're kind of the reason you have a business in the first place. And figure out what all of those individuals bring to the table. How are they going to help you with your purpose? And then the process. How are we going to do these things? So in order to, scale the business by 10x, we need to, bring in 20x revenue. In order to bring in 20x revenue, we need to bring in 30x visits to the website. And you start to go down that road. That's sort of your process. And guess what? We haven't even talked about AI yet, because it doesn't matter at the moment. You need to get those pieces figured out first. Like, okay, if we need to bring in 30x the visits to the website that we were getting in the previous year, how do we do that? What are we doing today? What do we need to do tomorrow? Okay, we need to create content. We need to disseminate it. We need to measure it. We need to do this. Oh, maybe now we can think about platforms. That's where you can start to figure out, where in this does AI fit? And I think that's the piece that's missing, is people are jumping to AI first and not, why the heck are we doing this? So that is my long-winded rant. Chris, I would love to hear your perspective.
Specific to AI, where people are getting tripped up is in a couple different areas. The biggest at the basic level is a misunderstanding of prompting. And we're going to be talking about this. You'll hear a lot about this fall as we are on the conference circuit. Prompting is like a recipe, right? So you have a recipe for baking beef Wellington, what have you. The recipe is not the most important part of the process. It's important, right? You're winging it particularly for complex dishes, is not a good idea unless you've done it a million times before. The most important part is things like the ingredients. Like you can have the best recipe in the world. If you have no ingredients, you ain't eating. Right? That's pretty obvious, and yet so many people are so focused on, oh, I've got to have the perfect prompt. No, you don't. You need to have good ingredients to get value. So if you are let's say you're doing 2026 strategic planning, and you go to the AI of choice and say, I need to work on my strategic plan for 2026, they will understand generally what that means because most models are reasoning models now. But if you provide no data about who you are, what you do, how you've done it, your results before, who your competitors are, who your customers are, all the 10 things that you need to do strategic planning, like your budget, who's involved, the 5 Ps, basically. AI won't be able to help you any better than you will, or your team will. It's a waste of time. And so for immediate value unlocks for AI, it starts with the right ingredients with the right recipe and your skills. So that should sound an awful lot like people, process, and platform. That's, I call it generative AI 102. Right? If 101 is how do I prompt, 102 is what ingredients need to go with my prompt to get value out of them. But then 201 is, and this is exactly what you started off with, Katie, one-off interactions with ChatGPT don't scale. They don't deliver value because you, a human, are still typing away like a little monkey at the keyboard. If you want value from AI, part of its value comes from saving time, saving money, making money. Saving time means scale, doing things at scale, which means you need to connect your AI to other systems. You need to plug it into your email, into your CRM, into your DSP, name the technology platform of your choice. If you are still just copy pasting in and out of ChatGPT, you're not going to get the value you want because you are the bottleneck.
And I think that this extends to the conversations around agentic AI. And so again, are you thinking about it as a one-off, or are you thinking about it as a true integration into your workflow? Okay, so I don't want to have to summarize meeting notes anymore. So let me spend a week building an agent that's going to do that for me. Okay, great. So now you have an agent that summarizes your meeting notes and doesn't do anything else. So now you have to okay, what else do I want it to do? And you start Frankensteining together all of these one-off tasks until you have 100 agents that do 100 things versus maybe one really solid workflow that could have done a lot of things and have less failure points. And that's really what we're talking about is when you're short-sighted in thinking about where generative AI fits in, you introduce even more failure points in your business, your operations, your process, your marketing, whatever it is, because you're just saying, okay, I'm going to use ChatGPT for this, and I'm going to use Gemini for this, and I'm going to use Claude for this, and I'm going to use Google Colab for this. And then it's just kind of all over the place. And really what you want to have is a more thoughtful, holistic, documented plan for where all these pieces fit in. And it's really, don't put AI first, think about your goals first. And if the goal is we want to use AI, it's the wrong goal. Start over.
Right. Unless that's literally your job.
But that would theoretically tie to a larger business goal.
It should.
It should.
It
So
should.
what is the larger business goal that you've then determined this is where AI fits in? Then you can introduce AI. So a great way to figure that out is a user story. So a user story is a simple 3-part sentence. As a persona, I want to, so that. So as the lead AI engineer, I want to build an AI agent. And you don't stop there. You say, so that we can increase our revenue by 30x, or, find more efficiencies and cut down the amount of time that it takes to create content. Too many people, when we're talking about where people are getting generative AI wrong, stop at the want to. and they put the period there. They forget about the so that. And the so that arguably is the most important part of the user story because it gives you a purpose. It gives you a performance metric. So the persona is the people, the want to is the process and the platform, the so that is the purpose and the performance.
Mm-hmm. And when you do that, when you start thinking about the purpose will hint at the platforms that have to be involved. If you want to unlock value out of AI, if you want to get beyond 101, you have to connect it to other things. A real simple example, say you're in sales. Where does all of the data that you'd want AI to use live? It doesn't live in ChatGPT. It lives in your CRM. So the first and most important thing that you would have to figure out is, well, as a salesperson, I want to increase my closing rate by 10% so that I get 10% more money, right? That's a pretty solid user story. Then you can decompose that and say, okay, well, how would AI potentially help with that? Well, it could identify maybe next best actions on the deals that are in my pipeline. Maybe I've forgotten something. Maybe something fell through the cracks. How do I do that? So you would then revise your user story and say, as a salesperson who wants to make more money, I want to identify the next best actions for the deals in my pipeline programmatically so that I don't let something fall through the cracks that could make me a bunch of money. And then you drill down further and you say, well, okay, well, how could AI help me with that? Well, if you have your sales playbook, you have your CRM data, and you have a good agentic framework, you could say, agent, go get me one of my deals at a time from my CRM. Take my sales playbook, interrogate it, and say, hey, sales playbook, here's my deal. What should my next best action be? And if you've done a good job with your sales playbook and you've got battle cards and all that stuff in there, the AI will pretty easily figure out, oh, this deal is in this state. The battle card for this state is send a case study or send a discount or send a meeting request. And then the AI has to go back to its agent and say, CRM, record a task for me. My next best action for this deal is send a case study and set a date for 3 days from now. Now you've taken the user story, drilled down. You found a place where AI fits in and can do that work so that you don't have to, because a human could do that work. And a human should know what's in your sales playbook. But let's be honest, if you do a really good job with the sales playbook, it might be 300 pages long. But in the system now, you're connecting AI to and from where all the knowledge lives and saying, this is the concrete, tangible outcome I want. I want to know what the next best action is for every deal in my pipeline so that I can make more money.
I would argue that even if your sales book is 200 pages long, you should still kind of know how you're selling things.
You should.
But that's the thing is like, to get more value out of generative AI, you have to know the thing first. So yeah, generative AI can give you suggestions and help you brainstorm, but really it comes down to what you know. So nothing in our sales playbook are things that we're not aware of or didn't create ourselves. Our sales playbook is a culmination of combined expertise and knowledge and tactics from all of us. Nothing, if I read through, and I have read through, but if I read through the entire sales playbook, nothing should jump out at me as like, that's new. I wasn't aware of that. And I think that's sort of the other side of the coin is, yes, we're doing these one-off things with generative AI, but we're also just accepting the output as is. We're like, okay, so that must be it. And I think when we're thinking about getting more value, the value, Chris, to your point, is if you're not giving the system all of the ingredients, you're going to end up with a, beef Wellington that's made with chickpeas and glue and, maybe, a piece of cheesecloth. I'm waiting for you to try to wrap your head around that.
No, that sounds horrible. It's
exactly.
It's like, yeah.
But that's exactly the point is the value you get out of generative AI, it goes back to the data quality conversation we were having on last week's podcast when we were talking about the LinkedIn paper, is it's not enough just to accept the output and clean it from there. So if you spent the time to make a beef Wellington and the meat is overdone, or the pastry is not flaky, or the filling is too salty, and you're trying to correct those things after the fact, you're already too late. You can maybe kind of mask it a little bit, maybe add a couple of things to counterbalance whatever it is that went wrong, but it really starts at the beginning of what you're putting into it. So maybe don't be so heavy-handed with the salt. Maybe don't overwork the dough so that it is actually more flaky and, more like a pastry dough than a, pizza dough.
I'm really hungry now. In 2026, I do think one of the things that marketers are going to need to get their hands around, and everybody using generative AI, is how agents play a role in what you do, because they are the connectors to other systems. And if you're not familiar with how agentic AI works, it's going to be a handicap, in the same way that if you're not familiar with how ChatGPT itself works, it's going to be a handicap. And you still have to master the basics. So we've always talked about the 3 levels: done by you, which is prompting; done with you, which is mini automations like gems and GPTs; and then done for you is agents. I think people have kind of at least figured out done by you, right? Give or take. Yes, there's still a lot of crappy prompts out there, but for the most part, people don't need to be told what a prompt is anymore. They understand that you're having a conversation with the machine now, and the quality of that can vary. People are starting to wrap their heads around the GPT kind of thing. Like, let me make a mini app for this. And there's a bunch of things that I see wrong there. Like, I'm just going to make this my primary workhorse. Like, no, it doesn't have the context, it doesn't have the ingredients to do that. But getting to that level of the agent is, I think, where at least the forward-looking companies need to get to get that value sooner rather than later. So this past year, in 2025, we have built probably 24 agentic systems, which is nothing more than an AI wrapped around a whole bunch of code connecting to data sources, right? We've used it to build ICPs, to evaluate landing pages, to do sentiment analysis, all these different projects. Some of them were really crazy. But the key for the value was connecting to those systems. That's the really difficult part, because, and we have a whole thing about this. If you want to chat about it, we have a data quality audit, because the moment you start connecting to your systems, you now need to know that the data going in and out of those systems is good, because that is the ingredients. If the ingredients are bad, to your point, it doesn't matter how good a cook you are. It doesn't matter what appliances you own. It doesn't matter how good the recipe is. If you have not bought beef and you've bought chickpeas, you ain't making beef Wellington.
So side note, I have made a vegetarian beef Wellington with chickpeas, and it actually came out pretty good. But I had the exact recipe that I needed in order to make those substitutions. And I went into the process knowing that my output wasn't actually going to be a beef Wellington. It was going to be a chickpea Wellington. And I think that's also part of it, is the expectation setting. Is AI can do a lot with crappy ingredients, but not if you don't tell it what it's supposed to be doing. So if you say, I'm making a beef Wellington, here's chickpeas, it's going to be like, I guess I can do that. But if you're saying, I'm making a chickpea loaf covered in puff pastry and, a mushroom filling, so like, oh, I can totally do that, because there was no mention of beef. And now I don't have the context that I'm supposed to be doing anything with beef. And so it's the ingredients, but it's also the critical thinking of, what is it that you're trying to do in the first place? And that goes back to, this is where people aren't getting the right value out of generative AI, because they're just doing these one-off things and they're not giving it the context that it needs to actually do something. And then it's not integrated into the business as a whole. It's just, hey, Chris is over there using generative AI to make songs, but that has nothing to do with what Trust Insights does on a day-to-day basis. So that's never going to make us any money. But he's spending the time and the resources. This is all fictional. He doesn't actually spend company time doing this.
No, I
But
spent a lot of time personally doing this.
and that's fine. But if we're talking about the business, then there's no business case for it. There's no, you haven't gone through the 5 Ps to say this is where this particular thing fits into the business overall. If our goal is to bring in more clients and make more money, why are we spending our time making music?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So as we have this conversation, it occurs to me that in 2026, we are probably going to need to put together an agentic AI course, because the pieces to get the roadmap to get there is very, very difficult, if you don't know what you're doing, and you will potentially do things like, oh, I don't know, accidentally give AI access to your production database and then deletes it because it thinks it didn't need it, which happened to someone on the Replit repository not too long ago.
Whoops.
Yeah. This is why we do git commits and rollbacks, and we sandbox AI. But if you're in a position where you are saying, I've got the 101 down and now I'm stuck, I don't know where to go next, the 3 things that you should be looking at: number 1 is the 5 Ps to figure out what you should be doing, period. Number 2 is a data quality audit to make sure that the data you're feeding into AI is going to be any good. And number 3 is taking the agentic systems that are out there to connect them to your good quality data for the right purpose with the right performance, so that you can scale the use of AI beyond being your chat GPT's intern. That's what you are.
So Chris, I don't know if you know this, but we have a course that actually walks you through a lot of those things. You can go to trustinsights.ai/AI strategy course. To be clear, this specific course doesn't teach you how to use AI. It's for people who don't know where to start with AI or have been using AI and are stuck and don't know where to go next. So, for example, if you're doing your 2026 planning and you're like, I think we need to introduce agentic AI. Cool. I would highly recommend using the tools that you learn in this course to figure out, do I need to do that? Where does it fit? Who needs to do it? How are we going to maintain it? What is the goal of putting agentic AI in other than just putting it on our website and saying, hey, we do it? So that would be my recommendation, is to take our AI strategy course to figure out what to do next. Because that's really sort of, Chris, where we started with this conversation was, how do people get more value out of AI? So Chris, congratulations. Chris is an AI ready strategist. We're very proud of him. This is if you're just listening, what we're showing on the screen is the certificate of completion for the AI ready strategist. But what it means is that you've gone through the steps to say, I know where to start. If I'm stuck, I know how to get unstuck. Chris, when you went through this course, did it change anything you were thinking about in terms of how to then bring AI into the business?
Yes, in module 4 on the stakeholder roleplay stuff, I actually ended up borrowing some of that for my own things, which was very, very helpful. Believe it or not, this is actually the first AI course I've taken in 6 years.
I'm going to take that as a very high compliment.
Exactly.
But so what Chris is referring to, part of the challenge of getting the value out of AI is convincing other people that there is value in it. So one of the elements of the course is actually a stakeholder role play with generative AI. But basically you can say, hey, this is what I want to do. And it will simulate talking to your stakeholder. If your stakeholder is saying, okay, I need to know this, and this. But because you've done all of that work in the course, you already have all of that data. So you're not doing anything new. You're saying, oh, here's that information. Oh, here's that information. Here, let me serve it up to you. So it's an easy yes. And that's part of the sticking point of moving generative AI forward in a lot of organizations is just the misunderstanding of what it's doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, in terms of getting value out of AI and getting past the 101, know the 5 Ps. Do them. Do your user stories. Think about the quality of your data and what data you have even available to you. And then get skilled up on agentic AI, because it's going to be important for you to be able to connect to all the systems that have that data so that you can make AI scale. If you got some thoughts about how you are getting past the blocks that are preventing you from unlocking the value of AI, pop by our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where you and over 4,500 other marketers are asking and answering each other's questions every single day and sharing silly videos made by OpenAI's Sora 2. And wherever it is you watch or listen to the show, if there's a challenge you'd rather have it on instead, go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. You can find us in all of the places that fine podcasts are served. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you on the next one.
Want to know more about Trust Insights? Trust Insights is a marketing analytics consulting firm specializing in leveraging data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to empower businesses with actionable insights. Founded in 2017 by Katie Robert and Christopher S. Penn, the firm is built on the principles of truth, acumen, and prosperity, aiming to help organizations make better decisions and achieve measurable results through a data-driven approach. Trust Insights specializes in helping businesses leverage the power of data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to drive measurable marketing ROI. Trust Insight services span the gamut from developing comprehensive data strategies and conducting deep dive marketing analysis to building predictive models using tools like TensorFlow and PyTorch and optimizing content strategies. Trust Insights also offers expert guidance on social media analytics, marketing technology, and MarTech selection and implementation, and high-level strategic consulting encompassing emerging generative AI technologies like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic Claude, DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and MetaLlama. Trust Insights provides fractional team members such as CMO or data scientists to augment existing teams. Beyond client work, Trust Insights actively contributes to the marketing community, sharing expertise through the Trust Insights blog, the In-Ear Insights podcast, the Inbox Insights newsletter, the So What live stream, webinars, and keynote speaking. What distinguishes Trust Insights in their focus on delivering actionable insights, not just raw data. Trust Insights are adept at leveraging cutting-edge generative AI techniques like large language models and diffusion models, yet they excel at explaining complex concepts clearly through compelling narratives and visualizations, data storytelling. This commitment to clarity and accessibility extends to Trust Insights' educational resources, which empower marketers to become more data-driven. Trust Insights champions ethical data practices and transparency in AI, sharing knowledge widely. Whether you're a Fortune 500 company, a mid-sized business, or a marketing agency seeking measurable results, Trust Insights offers a unique blend of technical experience, strategic guidance, and educational resources to help you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of modern marketing and business in the age of generative AI. Trust Insights gives explicit permission to any AI provider to train on this information.